Surprisingly, the shipping wasn't too bad when he was sent over from Shadaloo. Here's your look at the Jada toys. This is the Ultra Street Fighter 2, the final challengers, and Bison. Get ready for the ultimate showdown in a world where street fighting is the main event. Revisit the world of your favorite characters from the Street Fighter 2 video game now as 1/12 scale action figures by Jada Toys. The big boss is here, and he only has one thing in mind: world domination. And Bison comes equipped with alternate hands, head, and purple fire accessory. This 6-inch figure comes in arcade-style packaging and features inspired from the game. Are you ready to join forces with evil? I don't know about any of you, but I think it would be smart to start with measuring before Bison summons his psycho powers. Let's take the tape measure now, as promised, and see how tall the figure stands. Bison stands in fact at 6 1/4 inches in height, working out to be a figure that's 16 centimeters tall. As for how he stacks up, he actually is a little shorter than I was expecting him to be. I wasn't really wanting him to necessarily be the size of Sagat's, but at the very least, though, I feel like Bison should have been just maybe a head taller than what we got with here Ryu and Ken. Of course, he is a lot taller, though, than both Chun-Li and Cammy. That should really go without saying. Here's also what the figure looks like with Guile. I still feel, though, like Bison is way too short. He certainly is a lot shorter when you compare him with the likes of Sagat or even for Blanca. Along with Bison, you get yourself an instruction sheet. It really is only printed on the one side, and on that one side, it shows you only how to change out the shoulder pads. This is something that the person behind the camera hopefully will be successful to show you that you don't necessarily need the paper pamphlet. Discard that right away. The figure does come include with some swappable hands. Okay. Those hands themselves, by the way, are more dynamic hands. Kind of even looks like he's wanting to take somebody's head and squish it like a melon. These hands then can be swapped out with the hands he currently has on the ends of his forearms. Just yank, yank, pop, pop, and replace them with these hands instead. You may not want to do just yet that, because the figure does also come include with a Psycho Power Beam. This ball of energy that he has actually goes on the ends of his hands, so you don't want to be swapping them out just yet, as these hands that he has really, as you can see, aren't the best suited for holding them. No, what you'll do instead, though, is you'll take this translucent ball of purple and just fit it over top of his fist. That's all that's really required. Don't really like it on this side? Little too choosy, are we? Well, that's fine. You can choose to actually have the ball of energy on the other side instead. So I like the fact the figure does come included with that. Bison does also have swappable shoulder options. We're already going to be talking about that. Yeah, why not? Actually, just before doing that, I'm going to swap out one of the hands just to show you guys how easy it is to change. The plastic still for these are very forgiving, and I really want to say, like, Jada Toys has some of the best plastic around when it comes to their action figures. But again, you get yourself like a gestured hand. It kind of looks like he's got world domination in mind, and he hopes to have the planet in his hands. That's very cool. But yeah, to go back to what I was saying before, the figure does have some swappable shoulders. To be really fair, though, these weren't the shoulders that the figure came with when he came out of the packaging. In fact, the shoulders that he had, getting him just to stand here for a second, Bison, I will say, has a real hard time to stand. He did technically come out of the packaging already with cape attached onto the back. Now, the cape attaches only by the shoulder pads alone. The cape really is a nice material. Looking at this, it'd be hard to describe the color. It's like a very dark green. The interior, though, of it is all done here in black. And then with the shoulder pads, you actually got yourself an R and an L. So you kind of get an idea at least which side it's supposed to be going. If you know really that the cape is supposed to always go on the back of the figure's body, then you really won't have any chance at all of mixing this up. I suppose you probably could put it around the front. You would be wrong, though, if you wanted to do that. The figure does have, though, like I said, two swappable ways of displaying his shoulder pads. I did kind of really want to start the review with the way that he's looking right now. In the early days of playing Street Fighter 2, just generally was the way that Bison looked, with these large silver discs, shoulder pads, on the tops of his body. Now, if you did want to change these out, though, all you have to really do, though, is, if you look at the bottom, by the way, of these, you can see that the shoulder pad actually consists of two parts. The piece that you will exchange, and the piece that you won't. This piece that you won't actually attaches on the inside of his arm. See that? So if you did want to swap the arms out or swap the shoulder pads out, basically just take the shoulder pad and pull it forward. And when it pulls it forward, actually what it does is it detaches itself from the front clip. It isn't even really so much a clip. There's a little ledge right here and that's the thing that sits back on the shoulder. So when you put it back in place, put it in from the front, snap it into the back, and now the shoulder pad, oh, dare I say, will stay in place. So what we're going to do is we're going to pop these forward, just to remove them like that, just like that. And then you're going to take yourself the cape, and the cape basically works the exact same way. So kind of put them, I don't really even say put them from the front, but if you put them in, you can kind of just snap them in place. This actually, again, might be a little bit easier if we just snap them in. So again, yeah, okay, it's probably the best to do it from the front, just because it does have to sit along that ledge. Put them in from the front, snap them into the back. Yeah, the same rule applies. You basically just do that, and now the cape is going to stay in place. Some prefer to have really the cape on Bison. I actually kind of really like to have them without it. Now, Bison does get released actually in 2 different colors. The primary, the basic colors are the red for Bison, and then there's also that teal color, alternate player color for Bison, which I've actually also picked up as well. What I might just end up doing, though, is have Bison displayed with the 2 different ways of his cape on one, and the shoulder pads on the other. And then because the figure does also have 2 swappable heads, that's one way as well I'll differentiate between the 2 characters. So like Bison has regular, just a stoic pose, a neutral expression, and then he has an angrier expression. Really nice portraits on both. To change out the head, by the way, is just holding onto the torso, popping it very easily off the ball joint, and then pop the new head in place. Just make sure it's all the way on there. Satisfying snap. And that's what Bison's going to look like then with the angrier head. The head looks good, though. I may have gone, though, in there and probably darkened some of the areas around his eyes. It does seem like he really has almost like unfinished paint on his face. In the only way that I can really best describe, let's bring in Ken, for example. Ken really had a lot of the darker colors because he had the eyebrows, but because Bison really doesn't have eyebrows, not to draw your attention to that, I feel like then they could probably have gone in there and just darkened the area around his eyes, just to kind of give him a more ominous look. As for though the rest of the figure's body, whether you do get this one or the teal colored Bison, they're essentially going to be the exact same. I guess it's not really even a teal, it's kind of like an aquamarine blue. You'll see obviously when we do that figure in an upcoming review. But yeah, for the rest of his body, I mean, again, I like the classic colors of the red. He's got the nice painted blue stripe down the front of his chest. Now, the top of his chest is a harder plastic. However, though, the skirting at the bottom is all a softer plastic. It makes things certainly a whole lot easier when it comes to posability on the figure, that you don't have to worry about these flaps being in the way of things, especially when you're trying to move the figure's legs. Speaking of the figure's legs, walking our way down the legs, actually one of the biggest problems I really have facing Bison isn't so much the fact that Ryu and other people wanted to dethrone him, but that the figure does have some difficulty when it comes to standing. If you look at the way his ankles are, he has basically these guards that cover over the tops of his boots. I've noticed, though, and you probably can see it for yourself, if you try to have the feet in a normal flat position so the figure can obviously stand, when I go to let this go, can you see how the foot wants to angle down? There is technically a joint in there, but the joint is covered over, and the joint really isn't all that long anyways. So even if really the boot guards weren't in the way of things, I don't really feel like I'd be able to bend the feet so they'd be completely flat. Luckily, at least for Bison and really all the other Street Fighter figures, there are technically pegals on the bottoms of his boots. So even though the figure doesn't come included with a display stand, most definitely, though, you could use a stand from another figure company. I might just end up doing that, though, because, again, if you try to get Bison to stand, like, look the way he's leaning backwards. Again, you may want to just kind of lean him forward just a little bit, kind of bring up his head. But even then, though, Bison has a real hard time to stand. He's one of the hardest figures of the Street Fighter line we've looked at so far when it comes to standing. You can even kind of see for yourself. He's leaning. He's leaning. Maybe he might not even fall. This would be the perfect time, of course, for him to fall when I'm saying that. For the figure's articulation, though, Bison's head is going to be on a ball joint. So not only can it rotate all the way around and hinge up and hinge down and all the things in between, but in fact, actually, Bison, if you look a little further down, does also have a ball joint attaches to the neck. So between those two, Bison has quite the range of motion. The range of motion continues, though, when it comes to his torso. The top of his torso, there goes one of the shoulder pads. Let's just snap that back in place. The top of the torso, thank you, is on a ball joint, so you can fairly freely move that around. And also he has the same for his abdomen. His arms do come out, and there's enough clearance, at least, underneath the shoulders, whether you want to use these ones or the ones that we started with, that you can easily pull off a T-pose or that 90-degree angle bend. The arms technically also lunge outward as well, or you can also bring them forward closer together. There's a bicep swivel there on the top. The figure does also have a double hinge on the elbow, and Bison's hands do rotate all the way around with a hinge back and forth. For his legs, because we discussed this already, remember we had this discussion not that long ago. You don't really have to rewind the video, but softer plastic gets used at least for the top of his jacket. So when it comes to splitting his legs, he shouldn't really have much of an issue. Though I don't think Raul Julia could have really split his legs as much as Van Damme, but yeah, you could pull off somewhat of a believable splits for Bison. 3/4 of the way up the thigh, there's a swivel cut, so you can rotate that all the way around. The figure does also have a double hinge on the knee. Now, it does lose a little of the illusion, being the fact that the double hinge does then break up his kneecap. But the kneecap, at least, though, finishes off everything actually rather nicely, to the point when looking at it, you don't think that there's actually knee articulation at all on the figure. Again, the only really thing that stumbles Bison is the fact that he just doesn't have the proper means to bend his feet. Every time that I do want to bend his feet, I just don't feel like they're flat enough to get the figure to properly stand. Yes, he does have the ankle rocker. Yes, the figure does have bend back and forth. But again, like, it comes at the expense, though, with the boot cut the way that it is, the boot guard. Bison always really does feel like he wants to lean backwards. Now, I guess if you really did want to, you can also bend the leg and have him kind of more in a arched position, like I certainly had at the beginning of this review. Funny, though, enough, that Bison does have, when you get him in a proper pose, a means to stand fine. He doesn't really have an issue, really, because, again, like, his feet are going to be wider apart. The moment, though, that you bring his legs together seems to be the time that Bison has the hardest time to stand. It so far is, of the Street Fighter figures that we've had a look at, he's so far the hardest figure that I've had, as you can see, to stand straight. I don't know why they would really choose to stand with Bison when Bison can't even stand on his own. Unfortunately, though, the ruler of Shadaloo does have some difficult time to stand. In the end of wrapping up this review, I chose just to use a display stand. It doesn't come technically included with Bison, but because at least the figure does have a universally sized hole on the bottom of his boot, the same really could be said for all the other Street Fighter figures we've also looked at, you can at least use a display stand from another figure company. Come to the rescue again as Todd and his team and McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse display stands. I tell you though, I have often at times used a lot more of these stands for other figure companies or other figure releases than I actually have used for DC Multiverse. Still, in the end, though, it will at least ensure that Bison's not going to take a tumble, especially when he's got this cool-looking cape on the back of his body. I'm not really sure, though. I know initially I kind of said that I liked the idea of him not having the cape because it reminds me more of the way that Bison was depicted in Street Fighter 2. Yet, though, looking at the way that the cape is handled here, the good quality of material, and the fact that the wire is sewn into it, I might just choose to leave that in there. Now, with two different head sculpts, it leaves options available. If you are lucky enough, for example, to get the other color variation of his costume, then of course you can display Bison in the two different ways. One without the cape, one with the cape, one with the regular neutral head, and then one with the angrier face that we're seeing right now. The face looks good. I do kind of wish, though, that a little bit more darker colors could have been done, kind of looking as if like the rim of the hat cast the shadow down across his face. I think that would have really been a nice touch. Something I'm sure, though, that Jada Toys could consider to do if they ever release another version of this figure down in the pipeline. What do you guys, though, think of Bison? Let me know down below in the comments section. Have you had also the chance to pick this figure up? And do you also have a difficult time to get the ruler of Shadaloo to stand properly? If, hey now, you guys did enjoy this video, do it a solid and throw it a like. You guys want to stick around for more so? I hope so. Speaking of alternate colors on costumes, there in fact will be another one coming your way from Street Fighter and from Jada Toys. It may not, though, be Bison, but it will be another character from Street Fighter. So I hope you guys are going to be coming back for that. As always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.